Hello everybody, my name is KirkpattieCake. I'm an author and robot, and today we're going to do a movie review. Run, Hide, Fight is the first film released by political website Daily Wire, but it is not in itself a political movie. It was written by Kyle Rankin and it was released on January 14th of 2021. But before we get into it, and they're going to be spoilers because we're basically going to go through this entire story. So if you don't want the movie ruined for you, I recommend you either go to watch it yourself before you watch this video, or just make peace with the fact that I'm going to kind of spoil the entire movie in a minute or two. But before we get started, the March LBRY is accepting submissions right now, so down in the description below will be the link. Follow it, read the prompt, internalize the prompt, create with the prompt, and submit for your short story to be read on this channel in the first video of March. And the second thing is, and after you do that, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already, and share this video with others if you find anything that I say helpful or interesting, or just want to get some more conversation going on this movie. So one of the things that I usually mention, especially with particularly political backgrounds on films, or if the films are political, like Unpregnant, and like with books, similar, like When No One Is Watching, when there's a very political background, I don't think it really helps the story to highly politicize anything. It leaves the comments and the feedback prone to political bias, prone to political leaning, whereas, people who are conservative or more conservative leaning, or at least less leftist, will be more likely to just praise with less critical, with a less critical viewpoint, in the same way that the leftists or the liberals viewing a conservative film may be much more critical, as you can see between the critic score and the audience score on Rotten Tomato. And you can see the same thing happen in the reverse when you have a highly liberal or leftist movie such as Unpregnant, where the aspects of the film, the aspects of the writing, the aspect of the characters and the plot and how it works together, that stuff is not as critically looked at by the critics because they're looking at the meaning behind the film. So there's a lot of, in the critic sphere, in the review sphere, a lot of bias, and it's not necessarily intentional. Sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it's not, where you just want to support something that you believe is done by a good company. And believe me or not, I'm an independent. I don't really care about I don't really care about your politics in your movies. I don't really care about your different perspective in your movies. I care that you write a good movie. So in my critique or in my response to this movie, take that as you will. I'm not going hyper-partisan on the left or the right. I'm responding to it as a movie and as the story and facts were presented to me within the hour and 49-minute film, okay? So with that said, on to the film. It opens with the father and the daughter, Zoe, the main character, hunting a deer in the woods. It looks like he's taking her for the first time actually hunting, because he's explaining to her how to hunt a deer, how to hold a gun, and eventually how, after they shoot the deer and they didn't do a critical shot that killed it, it kind of just pierced the lungs, that it might be tempting to allow nature to run its course and to allow the deer to die naturally, but it's a very painful death, and it is more merciful to put it out of its misery now. While the dad is going on about this monologue about putting the creature out of its misery, the daughter goes and grabs a rock and smashes the deer's head in while dad is talking, surprising dad that, she's kind of brutal, and she kind of comes off like a psychopath. I give her a little bit of leeway, knowing that she was, she's grieving, so she's kind of emotionally distant right now, but she kind of comes off like a psychopath. The scene cuts to Zoe, the daughter, sitting at a kitchen table eating cereal. Her mom tells her to slow down, it's not a race, and Zoe is being kind of standoffish. Then her mom starts asking about senior prom, and isn't it coming up, and isn't she going to go? Has she asked anybody about it? And she, again, gets kind of standoffish, short-tempered, who cares? Then her dad walks in asking her who she's talking to. This is the first hint that Zoe's mother is dead, and she hasn't let her go yet. She's a figment of Zoe's imagination. Zoe gets up to go to school after her dad gives her the third degree, and then her dad tells her that they need to talk because Zoe is being kind of short-tempered, kind of distant, kind of angry, and so they need to go back to the counselor. This is one of those moments I was talking about that seems like there's just no understanding of how to be compassionate and no understanding of how to be gracious or calm or create a comfortable, sensitive situation. And I know that dads and men are not specifically inclined in that way, but as he sees that his daughter is having a hard time and that she's being kind of angry, he's pushing her that you've got that same look in your eyes as the men in my military war unit had when they went off to war, and you don't need to wear my war jacket to school because you're not going off to war, are you? So take that off and we're going to get you back in counseling and you need to figure it out. So it was very kind of harsh response. Her friend came to pick her up for school, and he's sitting in the car out front. When Zoe doesn't come out because she's talking to her dad, her friend comes in, this would be Lewis, and kind of gives her an escape outside. So the two make their way to school. She doesn't take off the military jacket. While the two are driving their way to school, they're kind of run off the road by a couple of jocks that first moon them and are kind of as dicky as you can possibly imagine. Once Lewis, who is driving, pulls off the side of the road, he unironically yells out the window, "Stay woke." While Zoe and Lewis are pulled off to the side of the road, they see one of their classmates kind of in the middle of this random field in the middle of nowhere doing something. Zoe watches and just says, "Oh, that's weird." And then eventually they just keep going to school. Also, because of the time of year it is, it's senior prank day, so there are pranks going on. And Lewis sort of talk about how annoying that is, and Zoe doesn't have any patience for the pranks. Going into the classroom teacher walks in and he is rude as frick because the teacher's lounge was filled with balloons, and for some reason that meant that he couldn't have coffee, couldn't have gotten coffee on the way to work, wasn't expecting apparently pranks in the teacher's lounge, but whatever. The class is interrupted by a quick prom proposal, and then the scene continues. Then we go on to science class where they're blowing up balloons. The class ends and the teacher says she needs to talk to Zoe. Here we have another adult who does not understand how to be compassionate, who is obviously written by somebody who doesn't understand compassion either, because she gets mad that Zoe is not participating enough in class anymore after her mother has died. As you might imagine, somebody losing their mother, especially when they're very close to their mother, especially in a very tragic way like with cancer, you're gonna struggle a little bit to return to normal. I'm sorry, but most people do. So the teacher starts getting on Zoe for not participating in school at the same level that she was when her mother was still alive. Zoe deflects by saying that she was already accepted into college and she's graduating soon and she just wants to move on with her life. The teacher confirms that she wrote a glowing letter of recommendation for Zoe, but maybe she made a mistake in doing that because Zoe is being rude now. Yeah. So exactly what somebody needs when their mother has just died is the teacher saying, you know, you were a good student, but now that your mother is dead and you're kind of being a sad sack, yeah, you're a terrible student and I shouldn't have endorsed you. What kind of leadership is that? What kind of teacher personality is that? Like, nobody in her life understands that you can be affected by the loss of a loved one? They just want to punish her for having grief? That's probably one of the major things that bugs me about this. There are no levels. There's not even a comparison, a contrast between how Zoe's dad approached it versus how this teacher approached it. They're just the same, which makes me feel like it's Matt Walsh. In the end, Zoe just agrees, yeah, you can't change the past. She doesn't try to fight the teacher, and then she walks out. Zoe then goes to her locker where Lewis left an invitation to prom all over her locker. She is aggressive and leaves it, slamming the locker shut. She's then sitting in class, listening to the teacher read, and sees smoke outside, lots of it. There is also a cut to a barrel that the kid from her class left in the middle of nowhere at the beginning of the movie, and it explodes. Then we cut to some kid coming into the admin building asking for when something starts, and he's carrying a couple of bags, and he leaves one behind at the administrator's desk right in front of it. Zoe meets Lewis for lunch, and because Zoe's being kind of a moody bitch now, he probes her about having found his invite. She mocks him when he tries to make light of it, saying, hey, let's just go as friends and mock people. She's like, are you freaking serious? And then after some awkward moments between each other, They both say, never mind, it's dumb, but then Lewis, in agreeing, goes, it's so close to that thing with your mom, and Zoe gets super mad and explodes. How could you bring that up? You are the only good thing about my life right now, and yet you're just like everybody else. Lewis tries to console her, saying he made a mistake. Please don't shut down on him. Zoe again gets mad, saying, what, you think I'm shutting down on you? You're saying I'm shutting down on you? She spills her drink while throwing a fit, and then runs out of the room to wash off her jacket before it stains. It's cut to the bathroom where Zoe goes in, and some punk chick is putting something into the ceiling in the back corner stall. Zoe obviously goes to investigate what the punk chick does after she leaves, but she doesn't find anything. Zoe talks to her dead mom in the bathroom, and her mom is like, you should be nice to Lewis. He wants to make memories with you. Lewis is still sitting in the cafeteria alone, waiting for Zoe to come back. Jocks propose to someone. Then kids are running away from windows as a white van crashes through them. This is the front of the building. Later in the movie, you get an aerial shot of where this van is because the van is moved out of the building. And there's like a couple of stairs, I think it is, right before you hit the parking lot. So apparently nobody noticed this van driving up the sidewalk and slamming through the windows on this front part of the front part of this building that's right next to a giant parking lot. That's kind of weird. Everyone's duck and covering. Chris, that guy from the field in the beginning, we're gonna later refer to him as just like the crazy henchy or the dumb henchy. He gets out of the van with a gun strapped to him, of course, because who would have guessed that this was going to happen? While the meanies take over the cafeteria, they kill a couple of people, including a coach that thought it was a great idea to run up to them unarmed without a plan while yelling, fuck you bastards, because that was somehow going to fix something and stop that there are like 4 people right now with guns procuring the area. This also, I should say, at this point, there were kids that ran out of the room when the van came in. There was also gunshots, because I just said they killed some people, so they shot a couple of people. And at this point, so you would expect kids who ran out of the room and classes that were around, or even kids that were maybe in the quad or outside somewhere, might have heard the gunshots because they were having lunch out in the yard. It's a nice day. Despite all of these sounds, despite people running out of the cafeteria because a car was running in, nobody is alerted that this thing happens. So not one person that ran out of this room when the van crashed into it, when the gunshots initially started, did they go and tell anybody in any of the rooms, any teachers, any administrative assistants, didn't call anybody. Nobody knows that this is going on, despite people having run out of the room. We also know that more people ran out of the room than just the kids from the cafeteria, because later when they go into the kitchen of the cafeteria, there's only one person there. So where are all the other cafeteria workers that would have been in the kitchen? They've already escaped. So why haven't they said anything? Why did nobody alert anybody of what was going on? It was just apparently nobody knew what was going on until the big bad meanies were the ones to say, okay, now start telling people that we're here. I don't understand how this happens. This is like the biggest plot hole in this whole thing, other than the one at the end. Because there were so many witnesses that would have gone to talk to somebody. As Zoe is leaving the bathroom, a classmate who was shot stumbles in. I don't know how she made it or why, because originally she was shot at the front of the room by the big baddies, but somehow she managed her way out of there without them noticing her, kind of crawling along the ground, gasping because she was in so much pain and she was dying. But somehow she made it all the way to the back of the cafeteria and then climbed into the bathroom where there would be nobody there, instead of going for the hallway where she might run into people. I think the hallway door was closer to where she was shot too, but you know. And after that, she dies in Zoe's arms because Zoe is still in the bathroom. We go to the punk chick walking down the hall, unlocking the maintenance door. The shooter kids in the cafeteria tell everyone to do as they say, and then obviously they go over to the jock guy to say, LMAO, normally it's you calling me a faggot, isn't it, bro? The dumb Hinchy shoots at the jock, thinking that's his cue, and then some dude stumbles into the cafeteria despite Zoe saying, hey, don't go in there, because he's not paying attention. He's wearing earbuds. She's hanging out behind a wall. Zoe's mom ghost tells her that she needs to run when they come. Zoe's mom ghost appears, telling her she needs to get out of that spot after the kid, crosses around the corner and gets the baddie's attentions. So Zoe runs back into the bathroom. She pulls out the ceiling tiles and climbs into the ceiling. While climbing in the ceiling, Zoe crashes through the floor over the kitchen, or crashes through the ceiling over the kitchen, whatever, getting the henchie's attention. The dumb henchie is sent in to go find what's making the sound. As Zoe hides, she runs into the one kitchen staff that's still in there, and while the dumb henchie kind of looks around and he's talking threateningly, the cafeteria worker who was on the phone with her husband eventually stands up, knowing that somebody is going to have to die if they both don't get discovered. So she stands up, she gets shot, and then dumb henchie picks up the phone and laughs into it that he just killed that man's wife, because evil be evil be evil. It's just a very flat evil. Tristan is the name of the leader of the Bad Lads, and he calls the school office to tell them that they have a shooter situation in the cafeteria. Again, how has nobody at any point made any contact with the outside world? The people that ran out of the cafeteria, how did nobody talk to anybody? Because this is the first time the office is hearing about it. Meanwhile, the punk chick cuts the phone lines for the school, and the bad guy then goes on a small rant about how the school won't call the authorities yet because the school board voted on verifying information before they can do anything, and well, that's bullshit, and they publicize it. Then he's like, everybody, take out your phones. It is time to live stream. I need you to take out your phones and start live streaming on all of your accounts. Zoe gets out of the school and starts to run, but then in running she turns back. She sees kids going into the school and warns them not to go in. Zoe then decides that she is going to start running around the school and warn people. Back in the lunchroom, the Bad Lad King Tristan talks to the live streams, thanking all of the big tech platforms that host this kind of content on their websites. The Bad Lad Tristan also mocks the school security guard because he doesn't have a gun, but is expected to protect the school. The principal comes in and says it's all his fault because this kid was in his office 2 times in the previous week and was threatened with expulsion. Tristan mocks how there's a sign in this dude's office that says making a difference 1 student at a time, and that you didn't have any time for me, and the question is, how sincere is that? That's like, I feel like that could be the most complex thing that this character says, but they really don't get into the complexities of the situation. The principal then tries to reason with Tristan, and Tristan shoots him. Meanwhile, Zoe is breaking in windows in classrooms, still in session, to tell people that there is a holdup situation. Everyone climbs out, only the one window that is broken but propped open, rather than the 4 windows in that wall. Zoe hits the fire alarm so that more classes start emptying out, but the punk chick is in the maintenance room and smashes the fire alarm and also kills the maintenance guy who comes in. So then everybody just assumes, oh, this is prank day, and the teachers lead the kids back into class. This is another big area where it's a plot hole, because in any situation like this, it doesn't matter if the alarm shuts off randomly like that. You're required to continue as if it was a fire drill and get everybody outside so that somebody can come and tell you, yeah, the building is all clear. It doesn't matter if the fire alarm shuts off. If the fire alarm turns on, your job is still to go through the process, get everybody outside to their checkpoints, and wait for clearance to be given. After the fire alarm is broken, the punk girl then cuts the power. Zoe leaves the classroom and tells everyone that she can find what's going on, even though the teacher is like, no, don't. Police show up at the school. The guard confirms an active shooter is inside. The office assistant puts out an announcement for a lockdown. Then the backpack that was first left there and somehow it wasn't picked up and wasn't put in lost and found and wasn't really checked first to see who it belonged to, it wasn't even touched or noticed. It explodes while Zoe was running toward it. This is following the teacher using the audio system to announce to the school that the school is on lockdown. So that also has to play with the teacher, or the admin assistant announced using the school PA system that there's a lockdown after power has already been cut. Is that legitimate? Because I have a feeling it's not. But I was homeschooled, so I don't really know how the PA system works. Zoe is looking over the dead bodies after the explosion. She sees her mom as a ghost, and Zoe hears somebody coming, so she plays dead. And the bad guy's girlfriend steps on her hand and kicks the security guard. Baddie Tristan targets a Christian girl, first to mock her for her faith, then, why would God allow this to happen to you? He gets visibly shook/irritated when she says, so the wicked can be judged. Baddie says they're going to collect bodies. That feels like something that they really wanted to say, but it doesn't do anything. And it doesn't manifest in the story either. So then Zoe's running around warning people when all of a sudden the bad guy's girlfriend shows up with a gun and starts shooting at her. Zoe uses the school however she can to hide, and then eventually runs into one of the rooms filled with balloons, uses the balloons to hide, and then beats the bad guy's girlfriend, shooting her with her own gun. Zoe tends to her wounds in the hall while Tristan is answering live chat questions, and the cops are at Tristan's house trying to get a hold of his mother. Plot twist, Tristan already killed his mother, and the officers find her dead in her trailer. Zoe's dad is cutting up the deer from the beginning of the movie when on the radio it talks about there being a hostage situation at his daughter's school. So dad grabs his hunting rifle and packs up. As Tristan heads back to the cafeteria, he tells all of the new victims to come with them. Back in the cafeteria, the dumb henchie is relieved that Tristan is back. The voices are gone. He tries to kiss him. Tristan doesn't go for it, and the henchie gets jealous, saying, "You love my sister more than me," because apparently dumb henchie and female are related and also in a polyamorous relationship with Tristan, because he says, "Nah, I love you both," and did not really seem turned off by the kiss. It just seemed like he was not in the mood. Curly-haired henchie is collecting people from classrooms when Zoe sees him. Zoe tries to run up to him and smack him in the back of the head, but Tristan uses a walkie-talkie to his lady friend, and Zoe's carrying the lady friend's phone. The phone alerts the henchie that she's there, and he starts chasing her down. Eventually, Zoe beats the guy in the head with a fire hydrant, handcuffs him, and takes him to the auditorium and sticks him to a chair. In the little bit of time these two spend together, Zoe calls this man pathetic, and he dares her to remember him. When she says, "I don't know anything about you," he goes on a rant about how someone in 6th grade pulled down his pants and the whole school laughed and teachers made jokes about his business, and that's why he turned to killing people. That is the entirety of why he joined this mess. At this point, finally, one of the teachers volunteers to help Zoe pull people out, find people in the school. This is the science teacher from the beginning, and the sheriff calls Tristan to distract him while they bring people out of the building, because Tristan was obviously watching the news to watch for people breaching the school. Tristan taunts the sheriff, and eventually he says everyone in the room is to blame for the current situation, for tweeting and posting and sharing, treating social media like a public trial and judging. He says, quote, "You created a job. You created an executioner from doing this." So the whole creation of reason of Tristan existing is because Twitter exists. Is that what I'm supposed to take away from this? The first group of captives gets out, and so Tristan catches into the game and he hangs up. But Tristan also then figures out that his girl and his, half of his team is missing, so he contacts the phones to get a response. He is answered by Zoe. He gets mad. He says he's going to kill people until she shows up. She goes back to the auditorium and convinces the curly-haired henchie to help her by calling him a fat loser who was bullied, and that everyone was just going to remember him as a fat loser unless he did something. So you want to be a fat loser, you fat loser, or do you want to help me? She pretty much manipulates him into helping her by calling him names. Zoe walks into the cafeteria, meeting Tristan for the first time. Tristan makes fun of Zoe's green army jacket and obviously uses this opportunity to brag to Zoe about everything that is going on and how brilliant he is. Meanwhile, Zoe's father is running around outside the school trying to find a good place to set up with his sniper rifle. As the crazy henchie goes crazy and tries to shoot Zoe, the curly henchie comes running in and points his gun at the two remaining villains. There's a shootout. Curly henchie gets murdered by the other two guys, and Zoe and Lewis go running down the hall, still live streaming for some reason, until Zoe makes Lewis put down the phone. Lewis got shot in the shootout, and so he can't really run, despite Zoe having had this wound on her leg and this tourniquet for most of the movie. But Zoe helps Lewis into one of the teacher's lounge areas, lays him out on a couch, and then she kisses him and says she'll go to prom with him, and then she leaves. It's also at this point that she tells Lewis that she thinks the place is rigged to explode, or if you thought that Lewis might be helpful in some manner because he was her friend at the beginning of the movie and he's here right now, you'd be wrong. He doesn't come back at all, really, for the remainder of the movie. He's just passed out on the couch. Obviously, Crazy Henchie is sent to go after Zoe. They run into each other again in the lab on the second floor of the school, and Zoe gives her position away by lighting some stuff on fire and making it explode, as was shown earlier in the film. This gives Zoe's dad an idea of where she is, so he points his sniper rifle in toward the science building, and eventually he gets his shot and executes the crazy henchman, and then is subsequently immediately arrested, as you would expect. To be honest, I'm kind of surprised that he was even able to run around carrying his sniper rifle and then place it somewhere without police seeing him, considering the situation, but that happened. And now that Tristan is alone, he's getting nervous. Ghost Mom shows up to tell Zoe that she needs to fight this. Zoe sends a picture of the dead guy to Tristan, and Tristan responds with, "Oh, you have no idea who you're dealing with." Well, Zoe then responds by saying, "Yeah, you're nothing, and no one's going to remember you. They're going to remember me because you are nobody." Tristan leaves the cafeteria with one kid with him and a bucket, and everybody else in the cafeteria is unguarded. Zoe returns to the cafeteria and starts telling everybody they need to get the frick out. It takes her 3 or 4 times. These kids are just cowering in the back of the cafeteria with, mind you, no bad guys with guns anywhere, just cowering, not doing anything, and it takes Zoe like 4 times saying, get up, and go, before they actually get up and start going. There are a couple of wounded people in the group who don't get up fast enough. Then Zoe sees that there's a bomb in the van that's in the cafeteria and it's going to explode very soon, so she throws the van into reverse and puts the gun that she was carrying on the pedal and forces that van out of the cafeteria before it explodes. After Zoe sets that van in reverse, she's already back out in the school looking for Tristan. The cops find her running around. They don't know who she is, so they pull her to the ground, force her to the ground, whatever, zip tie her. There's an explosion with a dead person coming out of one of their rooms. It is assumed to be Tristan. And then while Zoe is dirty, tired, wounded, on the ground, forced on the ground, being treated like a criminal, her mom shows up and says, "I have to go now, goodbye." And earlier in the movie, she was talking about how she can't go because somebody is not ready to let her go. And clearly, in this moment of trauma, is not a good moment for her to be releasing her mother, who was a source of comfort throughout the whole movie, especially when she was in an uncomfortable situation, or especially when she needed somebody to rely on. Her mother was showing up, giving her advice, calming her down, and in this highest tension moment, Mom says, "Yeah, I'm just, peace out, I don't care, peace out." It doesn't make any sense with the whole lore setup that she was being held onto. Zoe did not make the decision to let her mother go. So, what? It just feels like it was a forced conclusion because this is where it had to go. Whatever. Zoe's left sobbing on the ground as her mother forcibly walks away into the light and into the afterlife, disproving that she wasn't able to move on because somebody was not ready to let go. The sheriff climbs into an armored van, saying, "Sorry about that, we didn't know who you were, but you are a hero." She hasn't been seen by paramedics despite intense bleeding all over the place, despite the tourniquet on her leg. She hasn't been looked over by anybody. They just stuck her in the back of an armored vehicle. I don't really think that's a police procedure. Generally, the first thing that even with criminals, they kind of get you immediate medical care. After the sheriff, congratulates her on being amazing, she asks if she can have one favor, so she goes to see her dad, who is in the back of a police cruiser after he was arrested for, shooting off his sniper rifle. She's talking to her dad, and they're having a moment saying, "Thank you for saving my life," and they're, coming back together after their fight in the morning. Meanwhile, as they talk, Zoe sees this figure moving through the crowd, and it looks like Tristan dressed in somebody else's clothing. So Tristan is slipping away into the forest somewhere near the school. So Zoe asks her father, "Hey, where did you leave that rifle that you shot?" And her father says, "I left it right where it was, in the woods with a couple police cones around it." Well, guess what? Apparently, this weapon, in the middle of this shooting scene, the scene of a massive crime, of a hostage situation crime, where somebody else was shot, they do not have anybody guarding that gun, because Zoe asks where the gun is. This man was arrested for using this gun, and in the very next cut, Zoe has that gun in her arms and she's chasing down Tristan. So Zoe chases Tristan into the woods, and then she uses the gun on Tristan to shoot him through the lung. She then goes, and as Tristan is drowning on his own blood in this river where he's got a drop box of money and he was obviously getting ready to run, she hangs over him as he is drowning on his own blood and recites the same message of compassion and of mercy that her father gave her at the beginning of the movie. And then she walks away, leaving Tristan there to die knowingly in the most painful way that she could possibly think. She obviously doesn't tell any of the cops what happened, where he is, what's going on, and then she just, that's kind of where it ends. So you got her reciting that, leaving him to die, and then returning back to the parking lot with happy music, because that's supposed to be some kind of a happy ending, I suppose. So that's the film. Obviously there were a lot of plot holes. I had problems with the plot holes because the plot holes were the things that moved the story forward every single time. But the biggest thing that was the killer for me was the main character, Zoe. So the characters in general in this film do not show any level of depth. They show very little understanding of humanity, of people, and they show very little understanding of compassion. Zoe doesn't go through any character change herself. She doesn't actually learn to let her mother go. She doesn't actually learn how to be strong on her own. She just kind of remains this strong, stoic, bitter, cynical person the whole way through, and even ending still being a cynical, bitter, angry person that goes after the bad guy and thinks that she's okay to basically murder somebody and not tell anybody because she's doing what is considered correct against the bad guys. Whatever goodwill Zoe had throughout the rest of the movie by helping other people, she lost in that last moment when she decided that the correct way to take action, and her father didn't notify anybody else, mind you. Whatever goodwill Zoe had by helping people in the shooting situation, it was all lost when she decided that she was going to go pick up a gun and murder somebody else instead of having the authorities arrest that kid. She also, this was enabled, one, by the biggest plot hole ever, which was that a murder weapon was not being guarded when it was actively outside of a hostage shooter situation, and two, that she asked her dad where the gun was and then disappeared, and her dad didn't say, hey, maybe somebody should go check on my daughter because she just asked where a gun was. And then three, she was super wounded. She hadn't given her statement yet for what had happened. She hadn't been medically reviewed yet to make sure that she wasn't dying, and she was just allowed to walk off the premises. She was kind of one of the highest notable people. She was one of the highest notable people in that moment because of her involvement, and they just let her walk off. So what this story overall shows is a traumatized girl grieving over the death of her mother, who is cynical, bitter, and angry. She also uses the same manipulation tactics as the bad guys in this film by weaponizing the humiliation, by threatening, by demeaning, by lowering the esteem of the other henchies to get him to listen to her instead of the previous boss that he had. So that was not a decision any different. Listening to Zoe was not a decision any different than the decision he made to listen to Tristan. They were made under the same pushing hard down on self-esteem issues and on insults and on insecurities and manipulating somebody who was weak and feeling vulnerable. Zoe did the exact same thing, and she felt nothing about it. She never got over her trauma. Her mother just decided that she was going to leave at some point, and in the end, Zoe not only went vigilante, but she went vigilante to the point that she wanted to cause pain to somebody else because she felt like she was wronged. She did not look for justice. She was an agent of revenge. The other thing that really bothers me about the rest of this movie, and this is going out of these other things that I've already mentioned, is that pretty much everybody in this movie was useless. Everything relied on the shoulders of an 18-year-old girl. Everybody was useless except for that one moment where Dad shot his rifle through the window to get that kid, to save her from that one moment. But otherwise, the teachers were useless, the sheriff was useless, the kids were all more or less useless. Nobody was thinking. Bottom line, the production value of this movie was good. The acting was pretty good. The writing was just terrible. And as a writer, I completely rely on words because I write in books, I write in scripts. The story, the characters, the journey, that is what actually matters the most in a story. And I have to say, the writing of this movie totally suffered. It was so bad. And you could have just fixed a lot of this by pausing at any of these moments and going, okay, so this thing just happened. Now, what is the likely fallout from this, and how can we do that? But instead, it stuck to specifically the plot line that the playwright or the movie writer, whatever you would call them, wanted it to go through, and just pretended that the plot holes didn't exist because they wanted to keep it on a stringent plot line. So the characters were flat, and the scene extensions didn't make sense. That's my final verdict. If I had to give it on a scale of 1 to 5, I would probably give it a 1.5 or a 2. because the production value was there, but the story just, it's terrible. And I know that you want to get more into creating movies, Daily Wire, and one of the most important things that you can do for creating movies is not just have cool visuals. And I know that this is hard to get because Hollywood and the people in entertainment have gotten so lazy over the years, but a good story matters. So if you're looking for a good writer, well, I mean, look no further. I could help you. I could help you a lot. So if you want a good writer, let's talk. I'll help you make something not quite as this. Looking at the reviews, most of the bad reviews from the critics talk about how it's just not a subject that you should write a movie on. It's too sensitive. That's all garbage. There is no subject that you can't do a movie or a story on. It's just don't do it suckily. And I don't even mind the completely flat characters as much as I mind the plot holes and the failure to even make the main character go through a journey. She went through a physical journey of surviving this thing, but she didn't get through her trauma. She didn't bond with anybody. She was entirely on her own, and she didn't move herself. Her heart didn't get better. Her heart actually got worse through this environment, and disappointing. And I say this as, and that is what gets me the most. So I don't have a problem with stories that are about broken people. I write stories about broken people. I loved the Joker movie from 2019. You know, I love that kind of stuff. But it's when you place it that Zoe is some kind of heroine, that she's a hero at the beginning of this movie. She's not a hero at all. And I don't see that being talked about in any of the feedback that's positive. It's people that are framing Zoe as if she's a good person. And she's not. She's not a hero at all. So, I'm more curious if the people who created this film created it in mind with Zoe being a hero in the end, because it fits a lot of what works usually with the Matt Walsh POV and the Ben Shapiro POV. That's, if your target is correct, then whatever you do to them, even if it's vigilantism, it is justified because you're stopping a bad person. And that's the same kind of ideology that powers leftists, is it doesn't matter if you break the rules or if you do something kind of cruel as long as your target is correct. And that's not the mindset of a hero, just so you know. But those are my thoughts. That was basically the whole of the movie, and I'm sorry this is so long. I did not expect it to be so long. Let me know what you think on the comments down below. Have you seen this movie? Will you see this movie? What are your opinions on it? And if you have any others that you would like me to talk about later in the future, let me know down below. Until next time, thank you so much for joining me, and have a good week. Don't die. Dear Madam Astra, that's me. We regret to inform you that on August 1st, your employer, Agatha Jane Benedict, owner of the Benedict estate, peacefully passed away in her sleep. Oh, that's so sad. Wait. Let me try that again. Oh my goodness. That's so sad. Yeah, I think I'm ready. With millions of dollars on the line and the opportunity for your every need to be taken care of for life. Tell me, is there anything more valuable than that? I didn't think so. Dead End Drive is a dark comedy novel that makes 3 promises. 1, an illustrious estate in Louisiana. 2, an opulent dinner affair for all in attendance. And 3, and most importantly of all, lots and lots of competitive murder. So if you're looking for a cozy book to settle in with for the spooky season, I've only got one question for you. Will I see you at the Will reading?